Welcome to my channel, Scary Stories Daily. I have some great stories to tell. Let's get started. It was last year, during this season, when I was broke and struggling to make ends meet. I had recently moved out and didn't want to go back to my parents. I was desperate and looking for quick cash, so I started searching on Craigslist for caregiver or housekeeping jobs while also searching for a full-time position. After responding to several ads, I received a response from a man who advertised himself as disabled and in need of help with his daily routines due to a bad back. Having experience as a caregiver in the past, I didn't think much of it since I knew bathing and dressing could be challenging for some people. We chatted on the phone and he seemed nice and normal. So, one night, I decided to go to his townhouse to help him with his nighttime routine. It was a bit far from where I lived, but I was desperate and didn't mind. He even offered me the option to spend the night since he needed my help in the morning. When I arrived, he was a decent-looking man in his late 30s or early 40s, using a cane. He paid me $200 up front for the nighttime and morning routine. He explained that he was a former military person who recently had back surgery. Things started to get strange when he offered me wine and made comments about how cute he thought I was. Looking back, I should have seen that as a warning sign, but I was desperate and didn't want to cheat him, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He led me to his bedroom where he undressed for his evening shower. I was horrified to see that he already had an erection and wanted me to lather him up. He asked if I wanted to undress too, but I declined, and he respected my decision. However, he did touch my butt when I bent over to pick something up for him. I should have left right then, but I was waiting for the right moment. I quickly gave him the least sensual shower I could and made sure to keep it platonic. He got out of the shower and said he was going to bed but didn't want to wear any clothes. The guest room where I was supposed to stay was right next to his room. I was tired but still on edge. My gut feeling was telling me to get out of there. The problem was that we were in a 3-story townhouse, and he had installed baby gates on each floor to keep his cat from running away. He had also turned off all the lights on the lower floors, so it was pitch black. In order for me to leave, I had to pass by his room. Quietly, I packed my things into my purse while I heard the TV blaring. To my horror, I saw him swiftly walking to the bathroom without his cane. I realized he wasn't as disabled as he had claimed since he had pretended he couldn't walk without it. He still had an erection and was holding a big bottle of lotion. As quickly and quietly as I could, I fled the room while he was in the bathroom and ran down the dark stairs, jumping over the cat gates like an Olympic sprinter. As I opened the front door to reach my car, his house alarm went off. I got into my car as fast as lightning, my heart beating like crazy. I started receiving phone calls from his number, and every car that followed me terrified me until I finally escaped from there. After a 2-hour drive, I was back at my place, grateful that I had gotten out of that situation. Who knows what could have happened if I had stayed overnight, but I didn't want to find out. I was a young girl facing financial struggles, desperately in need of money. To alleviate my situation, I decided to sell my cell phone. Craigslist seemed like the perfect platform to find a buyer quickly. I posted an ad listing the price at $300, hoping to attract a fair deal. Little did I know that this decision would lead me down a path of fear, regret, and unspeakable horror. A few days after posting the ad, I received a message from an interested buyer. My eyes widened as I read the offer, $500. It seemed too good to be true, but the allure of extra cash clouded my judgment. Excitement mixed with apprehension as I accepted the offer, unable to resist the temptation of a higher payout. We arranged to meet at a bustling mall during the afternoon. In preparation for the meeting, I took extra precautions. I performed a thorough hard reset of the phone, erasing all my personal data. I wanted to leave no trace of myself on the device, ensuring that my privacy remained intact. Satisfied with my efforts, I fixed a time and location to meet the buyer, hoping to complete the transaction swiftly. As I arrived at the mall, a chill ran down my spine. Standing there was the buyer, a figure who seemed to blend into the shadows. He had a disheveled appearance, with a patchy beard, a long nose, and dark circles under his eyes. A feeling of unease washed over me, but I attempted to push it aside, reminding myself of the money I desperately needed. We engaged in conversation, and it didn't take long for his words to turn flirtatious. Uncomfortable, I tried to maintain a professional demeanor, brushing off his advances. I just wanted to complete the transaction and distance myself from this unsettling individual. Finally, I handed him the phone, and he handed me the money. Relief washed over me as I hurried back to my car, yearning to escape the presence of the creepy buyer. Determined to ensure my safety, I took a longer route home, constantly glancing at my rearview mirror, paranoia gripping my senses. The streets were eerily quiet, each shadow seemingly concealing a potential threat. Despite my unease, I reached home without any signs of danger, convincing myself that I had successfully evaded any harm. Days passed, and I began to relax, believing that my encounter with the creepy buyer was nothing more than an unpleasant memory. But then, a text message shattered my fragile sense of security. It was from the very same man who had purchased my phone. My heart raced as I read his demand. I was to return the $500 he had given me, or else he would unleash a devastating storm upon my life. Confusion and panic gripped me. How did he have my personal photos? I distinctly remembered deleting all the data on the phone, ensuring my privacy. I couldn't comprehend how he had obtained them. My initial reaction was to dismiss his threats, believing that he was bluffing, attempting to scare me into compliance. Firmly, I refused to give in, convinced that he had no real power over me. But then, the unimaginable occurred. He sent photoshopped images of me, completely naked, to my entire contact list. The recipients included my relatives, my friends, everyone. I was overwhelmed with mortification, paralyzed by shame and humiliation. My phone exploded with frantic messages, people expressing their shock, disappointment, and concern. My heart sank as I realized the magnitude of my mistake. I had never anticipated that this could happen. I had assumed that a simple reset would erase all traces of my personal information. It was a painful lesson learned too late. The consequences of my naivety haunted me, as my friends and family continued to question me about the explicit images that had been circulated. To this day, the memories of that Craigslist encounter linger, serving as a constant reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows of the digital world. I regret deeply ever selling my phone on that platform, as it unleashed upon me a nightmare that I could never have imagined. My hope now is to raise awareness and warn others about the potential risks and perils that await in the realm of online transactions. May my tale serve as a cautionary reminder, sparing others the same horrifying ordeal that I endured. A haunting reminder of the irreversible consequences that can arise from a single moment of misplaced trust. Little did I know that a Macbook I purchased from Craigslist would almost cost me my job. It all started when I arranged a meeting with a guy named Doucher69 at a local Starbucks to examine the Macbook I intended to buy. We had a casual conversation while I inspected the computer. However, I made the mistake of mentioning that I worked for a cable company. Sniff69 took advantage of this information and began telling me about his internet issues. Naively, I offered to check his account when I returned to work. He mentioned that he had extended coverage for the computer but couldn't find the paperwork. He assured me that he would contact me once he located it, and we would meet up to complete the exchange. We shook hands, I paid him, and we went our separate ways. That night, as I opened the computer, I discovered that Doucher69 hadn't formatted it properly. He had merely removed his applications. Curiously, I noticed that his contact information was still accessible in the Contacts application. I decided to write it down in case I needed to reach out to him in the future. I proceeded to format the computer and installed the latest operating system. Wanting to be helpful, I sent a text to Doucher69, informing him that he had left his personal information on the computer. I mentioned that I lived nearby and suggested that if he found the warranty paperwork, he could let me know, and I would swing by to collect it, making it easier for him. The following day, I accessed Doucher69's account at work to review his repair call history. However, I didn't find anything noteworthy, and I quickly closed the account without giving it much thought. To my surprise, the next morning, I received a call from HR summoning me to their office. They informed me that Doucher69 had lodged a complaint, alleging that I had unlawfully accessed his account to obtain his personal details. He claimed that his wife and child were afraid that I might harm them and that I had stolen their bank account information. HR had confirmed that I did access his account, and the situation looked grim. The seriousness of the accusation hit me hard. I knew how seriously such complaints were taken, and I felt utterly powerless. HR sent me home, and I anxiously awaited their call on Monday afternoon after they completed their investigation and decided my fate. It was a long and stressful weekend. My wife was 8 months pregnant and unemployed, and I was the sole breadwinner for our impending family of 3. I felt terrified and overwhelmed with worry. Sleep and appetite eluded me during those days of uncertainty and regret. In a desperate attempt to salvage my job, I sat down with the MacBook that had seemingly brought me trouble and wrote letters of explanation to my boss, director, and HR. I provided a detailed account of our meeting, including dates, locations, and copies of all text messages exchanged before and after the purchase. I poured my heart into explaining the situation from my perspective, hoping for a miracle. To my relief, it worked. People at work, including my boss, boss's boss, and former supervisors, rallied behind me. They vouched for my character and work history, and their support proved instrumental. In the end, HR sided with me but imposed a strict condition: I was never to contact the customer again, regardless of any issues with the MacBook. So, I complied and continued working at that job for another 3 years before eventually moving to another state for a new job. In April of this year, my story became something of a legend among my colleagues. I should have been fired, as in most cases, HR would have dismissed anyone involved on the spot. I still don't know why I was the exception, but I will always be grateful for the support I received. After leaving the cable company, I contemplated writing a scathing letter to Doucher69 expressing my frustration. I even composed a message on Facebook but ultimately decided against sending it. I had moved on from the incident and saw no value in confronting him. His motivations and reasons remained a mystery, but I chose to focus on the future and let go of any lingering resentment. This is the story about how someone sold me a stolen motorcycle from Craigslist. Little while ago, I was in the market for a motorcycle. Late one night after work, around 9 p.m., I stumbled upon the one I wanted on Craigslist. Excited, I immediately emailed the seller. Surprisingly, he was still online and told me I could come and see the bike if I hurried. Eager to check it out, I arranged to meet the seller for a test ride. When I arrived, the seller asked me for cash in hand and requested to see my license with an M endorsement. He wanted to ensure I was qualified to ride the motorcycle. Everything seemed legitimate, and I promised to return the next day to finalize the details such as the title and bill of sale. However, the next day, the seller informed me that he couldn't meet as he had been called into work. I was disappointed but willing to wait if he still intended to sell. Surprisingly, the following morning around 9 a.m., he called me and said he would be in the area. He offered to bring the bike directly to my house, saving me the hassle of contacting my insurance before riding it legally. I was thrilled by the convenience. During our conversation, I realized he hadn't asked for my address. When I pointed it out, he casually replied that he remembered it from when I showed him my license. That struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. Around 10 a.m., 2 days after my initial visit, the seller arrived at my house with the motorcycle. He was extremely friendly, and we chatted about motorcycles. However, he suddenly realized that he had forgotten the title at his house. He assured me that he would retrieve it, and then we could proceed with the bill of sale. I agreed, thinking it was a reasonable request. In a moment of impulsiveness, I even offered to give him the money in advance, despite knowing it was unwise. After some negotiation, I handed him half of the payment, $2,000, and he left to get the title. As I anxiously waited inside, an hour passed, and then another. I started feeling uneasy. I decided to call the seller, but he didn't answer. Another hour slipped by, and I was growing increasingly alarmed. Why had he left the motorcycle with me? Then things took a bizarre turn. 2 police officers suddenly appeared at the door of my rented house, banging loudly. Confused, I opened the door to find them standing there. They pointed at the motorcycle in the driveway and asked if it belonged to me. I began explaining the situation, mentioning that the seller had gone to retrieve the title and would return soon. The officers informed me that the bike had been reported stolen 2 days earlier. The person who reported it claimed to have seen it at my residence and had alerted the police. They asked me if I had stolen the motorcycle, and I panicked. I vehemently denied any wrongdoing and reiterated the circumstances to them. I also provided them with the seller's phone number, which he failed to answer. Worried, I suggested they contact the person who reported the theft. However, they mentioned that the number I had given them didn't match the one they had. It appeared that the seller had used a disposable phone. To gather more information, they asked me to accompany them to the police station. Though I wasn't handcuffed, I found myself sitting in the back of a police cruiser. On the way, I asked the driving officer if they could bring in the person who reported the theft. They informed me that the individual was unresponsive. I realized that the address I had provided belonged to the original owner of the motorcycle, the one who reported it stolen. It was becoming clear that I was being framed for the theft. Upon reaching the police station, I was led to an officer's desk. He asked me a series of questions before presenting me with a video on a CD. It showed me getting on the bike, exactly as described by the person who reported the theft. However, the seller was conspicuously absent from the footage. It dawned on me how meticulously the whole charade had been planned. The seller had kept the bike hidden behind his house while we conversed in the front. I had parked my car in front as well. The keys were already in the bike's ignition. When I returned the motorcycle, as requested by the seller, I left it in front of his house. The video depicted me getting on the bike at 10 p.m. with the keys in the ignition, riding away, and seemingly never bringing it back. The seller managed to stay out of the frame, and apart from a few glances in his direction, I appeared to be alone in the video. I realized I was in deep trouble. To summarize, I spent the entire day at the police station while anxiously waiting for the seller to appear. When he finally did, he began accusing me of stealing his bike. The situation seemed dire until the police managed to catch him contradicting himself. Overwhelming evidence and testimonies, they discovered that the seller had orchestrated the entire scheme to frame me for the theft. He had planned to collect the insurance money for the stolen motorcycle while leaving me to face the legal consequences. The police arrested the seller on charges of fraud, filing a false police report, and attempted insurance fraud. They also managed to recover the motorcycle, which was returned to its rightful owner. As for me, I was cleared of any wrongdoing and released from the police station. The incident served as a harsh lesson for me about being cautious when making high-value purchases and conducting transactions with strangers. It highlighted the importance of conducting thorough research, verifying identities, and ensuring the legitimacy of sellers in such situations. With the ordeal behind me, I decided to revisit my search for a motorcycle, this time approaching the process with more caution. I sought out reputable dealerships, thoroughly inspected the motorcycles, and conducted proper documentation and legal procedures to ensure a safe and legitimate purchase. Ultimately, I was able to find a motorcycle that suited my needs and made the purchase with confidence, having learned from my previous experience. The incident taught me the value of due diligence and reinforced the importance of trusting my instincts when dealing with unfamiliar situations or individuals.